My name is James Taylor. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. We're going to begin a presentation of the master plan process for Airline Highway Community Park. It's a BREC park on US 61, and we want to welcome you to this meeting. You will be hearing a little bit from me, but you'll also hear from BREC administrators, including Superintendent Corey Wilson and Assistant Superintendent Reed Richard. And you'll also hear presentations of the design from the design team itself. And that's being led by a company called TBG Partners. And you'll hear from Gabriella Weber and Hank Dalton from TBG. So with that, I'm going to begin sharing this presentation. We can get underway. Everybody see the screen?
Yes.
All right. So again, my name is James. All of you who are joining, I would just ask very quickly if you could reach the chat dialog box and just type in your name and submit that so that we could have a record of your attendance during this meeting. Also, the first half of this meeting will be the presentation of the master plan document and the drawings and some of the perspective illustrations that accompany that. During the second half of the meeting, we're going to open up the microphones for anyone who has questions or comments, and we can discuss the project at that time. Again, this meeting is going to be recorded, and at least portions of it will be available for viewing later via YouTube. So with that, again, this is the agenda for this afternoon. We're going through the welcome right now. We'll have an overview of the planning process, and then we'll review the survey results from public engagement exercises. We'll talk about adjustments made to the framework plan based on input from the public. And then they'll launch into the presentation of the master plan itself, followed by a discussion, and then we'll inform you of next steps in this project's process and how you can stay connected to it. With that, I will hand this presentation over to Superintendent Wilson. I believe you may like to offer opening remarks, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And thanks, James, for you as well as the rest of the Franklin team for scheduling and arranging this public meeting. Before I start, we do have a BREC commissioner on board as well, Commissioner Bill Sheffy, the current treasurer of the BREC Commission. Commissioner, I know you're here just to listen, but do want to give you an opportunity to share any comments before we start as well.
I'm just glad to hear what you guys are hearing.
Good. And yeah, we're excited. We had a public meeting Thursday night, and I won't talk long because we have some exciting stuff to show you guys. But one thing, as we look at the team on the screen, led by BREC and Reed Richard and our planning engineering team, outstanding job in terms of coordinating this master planning process. At the same time, we're doing the zoo and City Park Lakes. So suffice it to say, those guys have their hands full, but also the consultants on board, certainly Escape, TBG, Rome, CSRS, and the rest of the team that have helped us get to this point. One of the things you'll notice as we go through the presentation that I'm sort of most proud of is the fact that our community engagement and the key stakeholders, we have many user groups. And so the consultants did a great job of listening and being responsive to all the groups from the Santa Maria State Fair, airgun, baseball, athletics, maintenance, kayaking group. The list goes on. And so to be able to listen and hear and juggle all of that and come out with something that ultimately is responsive to all those things is a great compliment, not only to the consultants, but to Reed and our team here as well. So I'm excited about what lies ahead for this park, and I'm sure you will be too after this presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Superintendent. Reed? Let's see, let me.
I'll just a little bit of background for those who may not have been able to attend some of the previous public engagement during this process. We're taking a look at this transformation of Airline Highway Park because in 2014, during our strategic planning process, where we had literally dozens of public engagement meetings, we did discover a gap in our service for community parks, and especially in this area of the parish. And if you all don't know, community parks are strategically located throughout the parishes to be a 10-minute drive, regardless of where you live in the parish. And so this area of the parish was lacking. There was a service gap, and Airline Highway, because of its size, lent itself to become that community park that we need in this portion of the parish. And TGB is going to be going into a lot greater detail on what the master plan has been and what they've developed in this really transformational project. I'll let James, you
Okay,
keep.
sure. Okay, I'd like
And
to
so,
introduce
thank you.
Gabriella Weber of TBG Partners, who will begin with some background on this process.
Yeah, thank you guys. And just to stem off of what Reed was just explaining, we went through a master plan process that began last June. And so that has lasted for about 6 to 8 months now. And that included 4 stakeholder meetings, 2 community engagement meetings, and there was also an online survey provided on the BREC website. And all of these pieces of information that we received from you guys and all of your wonderful ideas and input, we have coalesced into the master plan that you'll see later in the presentation today. So the next couple of slides will showcase results from the survey and your feedback. And so we'll just highlight a couple of notable takeaways from this effort. And so about 81% of respondents said that they had actually visited Airline Highway Park before. And when we asked, why do you visit the park? Some of the top responses included coming to see the state fair every year. About a quarter of participants said that they come here for the air gun range activities and for cricket matches. There was another category called other, and that was an opportunity to provide additional feedback, such as coming to the park to take your dog here to play, to fly a kite, to participate in various sporting activities like soccer, tennis, football. But in addition, other notable uses for the park included concerts or special events, baseball games, picnics, hiking, coming to the park for the wildlife and vegetation that is here. And so with that, we can look at the next slide, which also highlights a couple of more takeaways from the survey results. And so when asked, how often do you visit the park? We just really wanted to understand the park use and how to maximize the space. And so about a third of the community said that they visit the park fairly infrequently. However, 24 or 25% that they visit said they visit about several times a month. So right there, you can see that there's a range in how often people are visiting the park. And so with that, we asked, how far do you live from Airline Highway Park? And about 31% of the community said that you guys live within 10 miles of the park, whereas 27% say that you live within 2 to 5 miles away, which is still within driving distance, but it still acts catering to the local community. And on the last slide here for the survey results, we asked, what activities do you like to engage in when you're recreating outside? And how often have you participated in these activities within the last 12 months? And so some of the common items that you guys have favored in terms of recreational activities in the past 12 months, and those are the green bar graphs that you see in front of you. That includes target shooting, birding, naturing, picnicking, going for hikes, jogs, even just going outside for passive recreation. And then we also asked, well, what would you like to see more of? And those are the blue bar graphs. And so you guys would like to see more hiking trails, more walking and jogging opportunities, places for play, kayaking and canoeing, fishing, maybe some tennis courts, pickleball, and maybe a space for throwing a frisbee around. And so with that, we'll roll into some of the edits that have been made since the last round of public presentation meetings a couple months ago. So the plan that you see before you is what we presented a few months ago at the public engagement meetings. This is our framework plan. And so just to highlight some of the key moves that we have applied to the plan as a result of all of your wonderful thoughts and feedbacks and comments. Some of the key moves that we've massaged the plan include bubble number 1, which is just noting that the maintenance building for BREC facility and uses is going to be moved closer to Airline Highway. Bubble number 2 states that the airgun range is going to remain in the same location that it is today. At one point, we were entertaining the idea of shifting the location on the site, but based on feedback, we said, okay, we're going to keep it where it's at. And bubble number 4 just says that we are looking at a baseball field layout that's going to encompass, you'll see in the master plan shortly, but it's going to be a little more central to the site and try to maximize the uses needed for that ball field complex. Bubble number 4 is indicating that due to some of the shifts happening on the site and where these programmatic elements are residing, that some major walkways are just being reflected to accommodate some of those changes, but we're still considering how are people moving throughout the site, both in a vehicular standpoint as well as from a pedestrian standpoint. Bubble number 5 says, we'd like to locate a dog park at the park, and so we are entertaining this space right here. And then bubble number 6 is noting that the boathouse is going to move more interior to the site to support the water needs associated with that boathouse, but then it's also going to take on a nature center to reflect the context of the vegetation and habitat in the area. And so with that, I'm going to allow Hank Dalton from TBG to tell you guys about the master plan and the perspectives moving forward.
And real quick, may I interject at this moment? Anyone who's joined since the initial announcement, if you would please open the chat and contribute your name to the chat, then we would have a record of your attendance, please. And now, Mr. Dalton.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Gabriella. As I mentioned, I'm Hank Dalton. I'm with TBG Partners. I'm one of the designers on the project. Right here, we have a breakdown of some of the final master plan layers that I want to introduce to you first before we jump into the final master plan. And then we'll follow that with some perspectives that help visualize some of this stuff a little bit better for those that don't read the plan as good as kind of designers do. So starting here, we have the circulation of the site kind of highlighted off the page. The line work associated with this is all reflected in the final master plan. I'll just add that. But yeah, here the circulation, we have a few different layers. We have the vehicular layer, and starting with that, we have an approach that takes a loop road into the site and throughout the site, connecting a lot of the various program elements together. Anchoring that loop road, we have 2 large parking areas on either side of the park to serve different areas and different needs. There will as well be additional parking provided in smaller quantities throughout the loop road that can be utilized depending on which program element you're trying to get to reduce walk times to make the overall park a little bit more accessible. Outside of vehicular, we have the pedestrian movements. The strongest pedestrian movement is going to be this pathway that James is highlighting here. This is our main promenade. It connects the whole park together through one big movement. That movement does spur off in a few different moments like there to connect over to the nature center, to connect further south in the site to different program elements. And then beyond that, we have some more secondary circulation opportunities for pedestrians to connect to the various different elements. The one highlighting there is a 12-foot trail that will connect regionally to additional network of trail. There's also internal sites that connect the various elements, whether you're going to baseball or to the dog park or any number of elements. This slide here breaks down the architecture of the site. We worked with Rome office out of New Orleans to visualize and understand the architectural needs of a project like this and a park like this at this scale. So moving left to right, we have the maintenance building, which is associated with BREC's kind of back of house, if you will, uses, their daily operations of the park, as well as some regional operations. So they'll maintain that building as well as a maintenance yard associated with that. The FEMA Safe House is obviously a FEMA-related component that will be used on a more daily basis for a BREC rec center. And then beyond that, you have the air gun range, which is largely existing, may have some improvements, but kind of currently just representing the existing nature of that. Adjacent to that, you have a band shell, which is associated with an event lawn that I'll highlight here in a minute, where you can have concerts and things of that nature. We have what's labeled as concession and restrooms in two areas. The bigger star-like pattern is representative of a structure related to the baseball fields there to provide shade for the spectators and users, also to provide some sort of structured element for ticketing and concessions and restrooms associated with that specific element there. Another kind of similar element there, but it's more associated with a playground and more kid-centric area of the site. And then to the right, you have the Nature Center Boathouse, which we've brought reference to previously here, it's in its new location. It kind of serves as a nature center, serves as a boat storage, things of that nature. Could be used for small events too. And then what's highlighted there is educational, is just more of a pavilion structure associated with a node that might offer a point of respite for a large group or small groups to engage with that particular area and other areas on site in a more educational fashion, kind of a group fashion, if you will. This next breakdown here is labeled as our environmental breakdown. So you can see it's very tree-centric, which is the main, it was a big, important notion on the site. There's two very large forested areas on the site, and then there's a large open space that we're trying to reforest. So that, yeah, James is highlighting those two. Yeah, and there in the middle, you'll see some proposed reforestation where we're trying to connect the forested canopies together to preserve the natural habitat on that side of the site, but also bring the site back to some of its more original states before development took place on the site. Outside of that, we're showing a various range of trees, whether it be parking lot trees for sustainable parking lots, trees associated with different program areas, a lot of heritage trees that you'll see. Several of these trees are existing on site. They're oaks and cypresses and various different tree species that are hundreds of years old. There's tree-lined streets and things of that nature. Beyond the tree layer, we also have a bioswale layer. So flood mitigation and just hydrology of the site is an important component. So we're trying to capture, filter, store water as much as we can to help prevent as much flooding as we can to the program elements here, but also more importantly, the adjacent community, which has had flooding issues in the past. And then there's also a buffer element up there. So we're using the tree to mitigate noise and views of the highway to make the park as isolated and natural feeling as possible. This layer breaks down our key program elements, not all of them, but the big movements here. So again, moving left to right, we have the maintenance area associated with BREC. Then we have what's labeled tennis, pickleball, basketball, which is a court facility closely associated with the rec center there. We have the parking lots, which would support those adjacent uses there, as well as the overall park. Moving on beyond that, you got the baseball fields where this design kind of transitioned into a more of a wagon wheel layout for a more traditional approach to how those baseball fields would be laid out. Those would be 4 kind of high school level, tournament level fields that could host different kinds of sporting events. And then there's a smaller little league level field associated with that off to the side. South of that, you have the event lawn, which again is a multi-acre, maybe I think it's 4 or 5 acre event lawn that could be used for community events, farmers markets, concerts, small concerts, the fair, things of that nature. Not labeled to the left of that is the air gun range again. And to the right of that is labeled splash pad, but also host a playground feature and a parking lot there. A little bit north of that is a multi-purpose lawn and the dog park. The multi-purpose lawn could host various other kind of sporting events, whether it be soccer or cricket or some of those that we've been talking about through several of our meetings. We have a historical educational zone, which is a largely just preserved zone to bring attention to the history of the region and of the site and provide educational opportunities to learn about that, as well as engage with the more natural side of the site, which kind of hugs the bayou and the creek on that side of the project. And then getting more immersed, we have a zip line course on the more forested side and other kind of ropes oriented components over there. And then lastly, we have that adventure zone, discovery zone, which is, again, another more playful but nature immersive zone that the kids and adults alike can kind of engage with various different kind of playful programming. And then lastly here is a culmination of all those layers plus some additional information to provide you with the final master plan. We've labeled things here. I think we've covered most all of the program elements, at least the larger ones, but this kind of gives you a good look at what the park could be in kind of a rendered manner that kind of ideally blends with the surroundings a little bit. We'll probably come back to this to field any questions, but I don't think there's too much more to point out on this if we want to keep going. Okay, and then lastly, we have some perspectives here to share with you a little bit different visualization of the project. So starting here, we have the Boathouse Nature Center. You can see starting with the architecture here, the boathouse element's more of the right side of this that would store kayaks and kind of have a rentable approach over there. And then up the hillside and kind of longer portion of the building there, the more nature center oriented space, but also kind of be the flex space for small events and gatherings. Outside of that element, you have nature play that's kind of tucked up in there, which is representative of that discovery adventure zone. You're starting to see kind of a natural component here on this side of the perspective in the foreground with all the various plant species and tree species that we have on site. And then you're seeing a little bit of the meandering pond. That is one element I forgot to mention in the plan, but we have the REC pond, which is largely existing on site, but going to kind of be repurposed for fishing and for kayaking use, as well as probably some other REC-based uses. So you can see the engagement of the boathouse with the water here and how you would launch your boats. This next perspective is, again, similar area. You can see the nature center boathouse in the background there, and you can see the meandering pond here. And but this is more on the more immersed natural side, the more existing forested side. So you have a visualization of the outdoor classroom. You have some interpretive signage, which might provide some of that history and education of plant species and different things like that. You have a little bit of nature play over here. And then as well as you're seeing a boardwalk component, which is part of that circulation system I described earlier, connecting over the pond, the different program elements that it would connect. This perspective here is near the ball fields. This is your kind of point of view here is taken from the promenade, the big circulation stitch that takes you throughout the park. You can see the scale of that and how it can serve many people. And then you obviously see the baseball component here and how we're starting to articulate the architectural language of the ball fields here in a very dynamic, kind of cool design way, providing shade for the spectators and kind of your bleachers and dugouts and things of that nature. You're also seeing here a little bit of the bioswale movement. Again, hydrology is really important on the site. So whether it be runoff from the building, runoff from this pathway, from the parking lots, from Airline Highway, trying to capture as much of that in these natural bioswale movements throughout the site is going to be real important to collect that water and hold that water as best we can to mitigate future flooding issues and other environmental issues. Yeah, I think that's about it on this one. Okay, and then we have this perspective taken from the historical educational zone. Again, highlighting one of those boardwalks that takes you over the rec pond to the more natural side of the park. Here on this side of the park, you have some of those very important, significant heritage trees, so the live oaks, like right there on the right. You have the largely preserved area for picnicking and just gathering space, kind of here in the mid-ground. And then adjacent to the pond, you'll see kind of a fishing pier, pavilion thing. You can go out there fishing, maybe you launch a paddleboard or something like that to engage with the rec pond. And again, showing a lot of the natural plant material that we're hoping to preserve and embellish on the site. Okay, I think this is the last perspective to visit on. This is of the event area and the performance pavilion. We're trying to highlight a structure here that's very significant and beautiful, has a nice contrast with the natural environment, but seems very fitting. You have the event lawn, which is just largely open space for different events, whether it be people sitting for a performance like this or could host any number of events. You see some of the signature heritage live oaks that happen around this site. And then you see the multi-use path that kind of runs adjacent or parallel to the loop road, which is used for circulation to get to the performance pavilion and beyond to different programming elements.
So next steps, we will be wrapping this up and presenting to BREC's commission on the 25th of the month. And then pending the outcome of that, it's anticipated to have a phase 1 kickoff April of next year. Informed at the website that are mentioned here at brec.org. All you really have to type in is brec.org and then Airline HWI Park Improvements. And then you can direct any further questions or comments to me. My name is James Taylor at Franklin Associates, james@franklinassoc.com.
Thanks for everyone's participation and valuable input. And as James said, there's opportunities to continue the conversation online and with the whiteboard.